I know that you probably have exams in a month or two, and yet you're having to learn all of this new stuff in class every single day, and you also have all the old stuff that you have to revise for your exams. So how do you actually balance it all? How do you make time to both learn the new content, stay on top of it, whilst also revising for the mountain of old content that needs to be studied? I think no one really clearly explains this, but it's actually very simple. My advice is to stay on top of the new content every single week and make sure that is being done first, and then you fill the rest of the time up with the revision of the old content that needs to be done, because they both have to happen, right? But if you start focusing on the old stuff starting from lecture 1, topic 1, and working downwards like a dummy, then you're missing out on taking advantage of the new topics that are being actually taught in class right now. It's obviously going to be easier to learn the new topics while they're being taught. So actually use the classes to create a good base for that new topic. Even though I know you have exams and I know you want to be starting from the old revision, getting on top of that first, and then you'll come to the new stuff, even though I know your brain wants to work that way, what's the point of pushing the new topics till the end of your revision? You'll actually probably waste more time that way overall, and you'll waste the opportunity of learning it with everyone, with your teachers, with the people around you that can help you. It's the same as that catch-up video I made. If you start with the old content, you will always be behind. So get ahead on the stuff you're doing now. You don't need to do it perfectly, just get the basics in for the new stuff that's being taught, and then you can go and tackle all the old stuff that you've fallen behind on. But it's easier said than done, so let me explain how you're going to study the new stuff versus the old stuff. The way you will study any topic will not change. Whether it's new content or old content, let me repeat, the process remains the exact same. With a new topic, after it's been taught in class, review it ASAP, like the very next day, and that'll be the first revision of that topic. And in this review, your job is to make sure you get a rock solid base of that entire topic, which for me means that number 1, I skim read everything and get a basic understanding of it. Then I create a mind map that links every subtopic together through one central idea. After I've done those 2 very important steps, do I then go through the general concepts and create my recall questions, my flashcards, whatever I'll be using to revise in the future. I have videos on how I make the mind maps, how I create my recall questions, how I go through the information, all of them in my live studying series. Check that out right here. And that's all you need to do for the new topics that are being taught right now. We'll come back to when we actually do this practice questions, etc. But just do this first revision in the way I've described. Now for the actual revision. Let me describe how you're going to space out the revision of the new topics and the old topics, and how you're going to do it before the exams. Your aim should be to learn every new topic through spaced repetition. And I'm going to tell you my spaced repetition formula that's worked for me over countless years, my friends, my mentees, and so many people on this channel. What you do is you first revise the topic on day 1, then you revise it on day 4 to 5, and then you revise it on day 14 or later. And then after that, you just review the topic with mixed practice questions closer to your exam. Do this with every topic. This is the optimal way to space the material that you're learning. You don't need to repeat the material 7 times before it goes in your head. Just study smart in each session, and all you'll need is those 2 to 3 repetitions. I've organized and spaced out all the topics that I had to study over a month's period of time, and I've done it for a big exam that I had to do. I'll put up the screenshot or a screen recording of it now, but check the full video out to learn how to actually space out all the topics smartly. As for the old topics that you need to revise, I'm gonna be honest, it kind of depends on how well you've done that topic during the year. Like for me, revising some of the old content is piss easy because I created such a good foundation for them. I primed them, made mind maps, made my questions, all of it while they were being taught initially. So all I'll really need to do is keep on practicing the questions I made and then space out the repetition of that practice. But some weeks, YouTube placement work, all of it was really busy, it got really overwhelming, so I naturally just slacked off on the work or the conditions I had to do those weeks. And that's normal, by the way. No one actually spends 100% of their time studying everything perfectly as it's being taught. So the fastest way now to get really good, especially if you have a huge body of content that you haven't revised much, is to grab one major topic at a time and pretend you've never learned it before. And in the exact same way that we did with the new topics, in the first revision, number 1, skim it all, number 2, create mind maps and create that base. Only then go through the concepts generally and create your notes or questions or whatever you're doing to revise. The skimming and mind mapping may take an extra hour, but it is a must, because that single hour where I looked at the entire topic, created that base, linked the subtopics together, is the only reason that I remember some of the conditions that I learned 6 to 8 months ago, even now. Because by doing this extra step, you'll be able to get the whole big picture of the bunch of topics with a bunch of conditions you're learning, and you'll be able to link them together through a central idea that makes sense in your head. And because that one central idea makes sense, you've figured out what the similarities and the differences are between subtopics and topics of the major thing that you're studying, you will remember it for much, much longer. And even if you come back to revise those topics way later, you'll be able to relearn the concepts, go through the general concepts again, and quickly understand it because you had that one central idea that helped you understand the topic very well. After that base is created, going through details, learning the specific guidelines or whatever specifics you have to memorize is very easy because you can place it somewhere on that mind map in your head. By the way, when you're done with that first session, that physical mind map doesn't really matter anymore. It's the central idea through which the subtopics are linked together. It's the drawings, the similarities and differences between some things, the way everything works. That is what you will remember. But what I'd recommend more is actually starting to do practice questions from the first session itself, using the question banks or the past papers that you have from school. Because those questions are the key indicator for what your examiner will be testing you on in your actual test. Doing questions as soon as you start revising a topic, yes, it's scary, but it will focus your revision. You'll start to understand what is more likely to come up, what do I need to focus on in my next revisions, and what do I actually not need to give much time to. Like for me, the main questions they ask about diabetes are the medications, the guidelines, the investigations, all of the stuff that comes at the end of my chapter in diabetes. The pathophysiology and the with exact mechanisms, all of that takes the majority of my time, like the chapter up. So if I spend ages reading through that chapter, am I not wasting all my time when I could just be focusing a lot more on memorizing the medications and actually understanding the guidelines inside out? So do the questions. You're studying for an exam. You're not becoming a specialist on that topic. You need to focus on what the examiner is testing. Now in the second revision of the topic, this is when I just start by doing the recall questions that I created in the first one. By the way, for the topics I've already studied well in the semester itself, I would start the revision, my actual revision of that topic, by doing this revision session first. I would just start with the recall questions because I've already done the mind map. I've already created the questions, so I don't need to do that again. Anyways, just wanted to clear that up in case it wasn't obvious. So I straight away start by revising with my questions. What I'm not going to do is revise the entire topic again in the second revision. And I know most of you will be tempted to do that. You'll want to revise it again because you hate getting questions wrong. And because most of you just want to be right, you're too scared to get questions wrong. You'll try and perfect the topic as much as possible before you start doing any of the questions, which is so counterintuitive. You'll end up learning less, you'll end up remembering less, and it is just very dumb. By waiting for the 4 to 5 days after you've done the first revision of the content, you are letting yourself forget. And by doing that, you're now going to be forcing your brain, thinking of all the details of everything, the mind map and how it worked, to remember the answer to that question. That process of working out the question in your head, forcing your brain to remember, trying hard, the effort you put in, the more it is, the more it'll ingrain in your head, the more you will remember the information. Yeah, most people know about active recall, but do you actually start implementing it from that very first session, from the very first moment that you start studying a topic? Do you implement it straight after you're making that mind map and understanding the topic? Do you implement it in that second session where instead of just, oh, let me perfect and remember all the details before I go to the questions, do you actually go and test yourself on the questions? Because that is what's important. And despite watching all of these videos, most of the people I know, despite knowing about all of this, still do the same things that they used to do. Again, I've shown how I do the active recall thing in my live session. You will see me spending a lot of time in my head answering the questions, working out. If I don't know, then I will try my hardest to work through from first principles. What do I know about this? From what I kind of remember, how can I work out the details? If I can't get to the exact details, if I get it wrong, at least I put all the effort in to remember it. And then if I don't get it, then I'll go back, revise it from the content that I got the questions from, the actual textbook or the video or whatever, and then learn it and put it in my head in a different way this time so that I remember it better the next time. And overall for the topic, pretty much my third revision is the exact same as the second one. I just keep on doing these questions, making myself better at them, learning the topic in a better way so that I actually remember for the exam. It's a simple process, and again, I go through it a lot in my videos, like check any of these out. But the key difference in this second revision, now that I did all that mind mapping and everything in that first session, is that because I created that base, each part of the disease, each main concept makes such simple sense to me now. Every subtopic, concept, whatever is linked through one central idea, and then whenever I do questions, whenever I actually work through practice problems now, I can use my intuitive logic of the topic and think about how I connected the topic with my mind map and work through like 80% of the questions, even though I did this topic that I'm studying right now like months ago. I literally only started doing this like last September. I started skimming, priming, and creating mind maps for the conditions that I needed to learn, and trust me, for the conditions that I actually did it for, I remember them in so much more clarity. It's more intuitive to me compared to the conditions that I just got too lazy to do the actual mind maps for and just dove in straight away. I regret it so much. Like, it didn't matter whether I made notes or questions or whatever. The only thing that I remember is how that mind map worked. I'm sorry I'm barging so hard about this, but it is such an important thing to create that base first and then build on top of that with the new topics, with the old topics. It'll help you with everything. So again, that is the one key piece of advice I have. Create the base first, then build on top of it. That is how you should be revising. Past papers, question banks first. Create your own recall questions. That is the main revision tactic that I'm using for my exams right now even. Balancing the old revision that you have to do and the new topics that you have to do isn't hard. You prioritize doing the new topics first, get on top of that, and then tackle the old content. Because if you do it the other way around, you will always be behind. Do one revision for the new content like ASAP after it's taught and treat that as your first revision. Attempt it like 4 to 5 days later, then 14 days later. Do this with all of your topics. And with the old revision, if you've done it well, just start with the practice questions. If you've not done it well, then just make the first base, make the base properly, skim, mind map all of it, and then go through the concepts, learn it all properly. You all got this. This is all very doable. This is a video of how I organized and spaced out my topics live for an exam I had earlier this year. Check it out. I've shown the spreadsheet that I used to make it. And this is a full 30-minute guide on how to tackle big exams and study them in a super smart way, super practical way. Honestly, I'd highly recommend both of these. Check them both out. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like, spam the comments, do all the usual stuff, help me out with the algorithm, check my Insta out, support in every single way that you can, share all of that stuff, and I'll see you in the next one.